Gill's Exposition of the Bible, Revelation, chapter 3, verse 2. Be watchful, which may respect both ministers and members. The ministers of the gospel, whose business is to watch over themselves, their conversation and doctrine, and watch every opportunity to preach it, and the success of their ministry, and that they do not grow careless or be drawn aside through frowns or flatteries, and over others, as shepherds do, to know the state of their flock, as watchmen of cities to give the time of night, and notice of approaching danger, and to see that the laws of Christ's house are put into execution. And this may also respect the members of these churches, who ought to be watchful and constant attenders on the word and ordinances, in the duty of prayer, and should watch over themselves, their hearts, thoughts, affections, words and actions, and against sin, Satan, the world, and false teachers, or be awake, which shows that both ministers and churches are asleep, or much inclined to it, which is the present case of both in this period of time. And strengthen the things which remain, that are ready to die, not good works, though these may be said to be ready to die when men grow weary of them, are lifeless in the performance of them, and want zeal for them, and may be said to be strengthened when men do their first works, nor the graces of the Spirit, for the whole work of grace remains, and though it is imperfect, yet no part is, or can be taken away from it. Yea, there is an increase of it, though it may not be discerned. The work of grace cannot die, or be ready to die. There may be a decline as to the exercise of it, and a want of liveliness in it, and things may be ready to die in appearance, and in the apprehension of believers, but not in reality. And besides, it is God's work, not man's, to strengthen this. Therefore they may intend the truths of the gospel, which at the beginning of the Reformation were revived, and were preached with great life and liveliness, but towards the close of the state, as now, would be just ready to expire, to be among lost and dead and buried, as they are, and which it becomes both ministers and members of the churches to hold and hold up, establish and confirm, or else the rest of the members of this church may be meant, those of them that remain, that were not wholly sunk and apostatized, and yet were in a very faint and sickly state, scarce any life in them, ready to give up their religion and profession, which should be strengthened by preaching the pure gospel, by faithfully administering the ordinances of it, and by speaking comfortable and encouraging words to them. The compulsory edition in some copies read, quote, which thou art about loss, unquote, which seems a good reading, and the Arabic version in some other copies, quote, which thou art going to reject, unquote. For I have not found thy works perfect before God, meaning that the reformers and the reformed churches stuck where they first began, and did not carry their works neither with respect to doctrine, and especially with respect to discipline and worship, to a greater perfection, as they ought to have done, and, however perfect they might appear before men, they were not so in the sight of the omniscient God, nor found so by Christ, before whom all things are naked and open. The Arabic version reads, quote, before me, unquote. And the Alexandrian copy in the compulsory edition and the Vulgate Latin, Syriac, and Ethiopic version reads, quote, before my God, unquote. This church, though she has departed from the corrupt church of Rome, and from her evil doctrines and practices, yet did not go on to that perfection which might have been expected and desired, and which would have rendered her praiseworthy, whereas she is now discommended. It is an observation of a Jewish writer that, quote, if one departs from an evil way and does not do that which is good, he does not make his work perfect, and he is not pronounced blessed, unquote. End of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 2.